DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Welcome to DJNTV and Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Now introducing the one and only Ben Stowe.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's show on DJNTV. That's right, we're 2 minutes late. Why are we 2 minutes late? Well, because we were on strike. Do you see ice cream in our hands? Seriously.
No.
2 minutes?
No, you do not.
2 minutes is our first on strike. Next time we might go like 2.5. Okay, we've made our point. No ice cream. No.
That's right. We're going to start late. We suffer, everybody suffers. That's
everybody suffers. Internet problems tonight, so thank you for joining us. Just a couple of minutes late. We've got some folks jumping in, Greg and Scott, and I think I've got Phil and Trevor. Oh, yeah. So thank you for joining us this evening. Ben, tonight I just wanted to kind of set the stage because we're going to be doing some things over the course of the next months, looking at speakers a little bit because this is a big topic. And over the off season, people are wanting to upgrade or change or tweak, or they want to do some things to make it so they're going to be a little bit better in some ways in 2021 when they're out and about again. And I wanted to kind of just have a kind of a light night of looking back at kind of the history of speakers. And we've talked about this in past shows. But the way they changed and just kind of for those people who are thinking that speakers have always been like this and you know what's so incredible about an Evolve speaker, the Evolve 50, and why are DJs who are my age thinking, oh my God, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread?
Well, it's a great topic, John, because first of all, it's hard to be a DJ without speakers. For the vast majority of the industry, we're bringing PA with us, right? And even if you aren't bringing your PA, you have to have something to plug into eventually. So, and like you said, I think there's a generation of people who, and you and I mean, we're not particularly old, but just in our lifetimes and in our careers, mine spanning just under 30 years, and yours, I think
10 or 12 years. Yeah. 10 or 12 years. Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. We've seen so many advancements and, this was kind of fun. It was kind of a fun trip down memory lane. I had some fun conversations with some engineers. Ironically, one of them is even younger than me, but he's just a very gifted and talented guy, Mike Caston. He's been on some of our shows in the past.
Yeah.
I actually asked a few other retired engineers who had kind of walked this walk and they were very modest and shy and said, no, I don't know if I'd have much to add. And I'm like, I've seen your name on the patents. Like, I know you invented this, but they said, no, you'll do fine. I think, these guys, they're engineers and they're brainiacs, but they don't necessarily want the spotlight, so to speak. So, but it was really fun to have some of those conversations and to kind of put some of this information together. So I think I've got a few photos, that and they're kind of low quality and grainy because, well, they're old. But it kind of looks at that evolution of, PA speakers and concert speakers, and all of that will bring us to where we are now, the evolution of the Evolve, as it were, and the modern speaker that we use. And there's so many things that go into that. It's really not just one thing. So, I mean, I can just kind of jump into the photos if you want, or if you've got a particular direction you want to go, we can go there too.
Let's take it back to the days of when we were really young, and Grandma and Grandpa had this big piece of furniture in the living room.
Yeah,
that had a record player in it, and it had a AM radio, most like in a thing, and of course you had to do the whole thing, and it had this huge speaker in the front.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Electric Voice used to make the Patrician, which had, I think, a 30-inch.
Yeah, I think some of these were just massive, and yet, by today's standards, it's you think the size and such, and you're thinking, oh wow, well, this probably gets really loud. No, not really.
No, but I think, things were measured differently then too, certainly in terms of how we think about wattage. And we've talked about wattage before. I think wattage is largely a victim of the marketing game, but also a lot of those amplifiers were tube powered. In fact, here in my own den, I've got an old amplifier, and see if I can get it over here. Oh, the cord is not quite long enough.
Oh no!
There it goes. It's kind of fun. It's old
there.
tube PA amplifier. This is a mixer amp, basically the old PA mixer amp, and I keep this in my den here at home. While this is small, this actually came from a bowling alley, and it would have been at one point cutting edge, state of the art.
So and that's where I was kind of wondering is the speaker that they were back then, they didn't have the capabilities of or what they're doing now, of course. Was it just the technology they didn't have back then to be able to make magnets bigger, or was it just that the needs weren't there, or is it just that how did they transition from there to here?
I think it's all of the above, and I think if we look at the evolution, what we see is it's kind of a hump shape where things get bigger and heavier, and now they're getting smaller and lighter. At one point that was the answer, and again, I'll kind of show this in some of the photos where the answer was bigger. And now the answer is better. Not to say that they weren't getting better as well as they were getting bigger, but now we've learned how to do more with less. And that of course is a very desirable thing, but I think it's a lot of things. I think it's, a learned journey, from the material selection. What do we make loudspeakers out of? What are the tolerances for the coils? What are the optimal materials for the cones? For to the other drivers, diaphragms, that sort of thing.
You mentioned materials. Let's just touch on that for a little bit. How much of the material changes from those early, those units of the 50s and 60s that Grandma used to play her 45s on, 78s on?
I would say a lot. Without getting into really the weeds on this, but I think one of the areas that I think we've seen substantial change is, you mentioned bigger magnets, and I would say actually, what the biggest advancement was like neodymium magnets, more powerful magnets, smaller, lighter magnets, not carrying. And again, we kind of have this hump of bigger, smaller, and yet the stuff we have today absolutely crushes the stuff we had 20 years ago. So both in terms of sound quality and also loudness.
We have one of our viewers, Scott. Thanks for sending it over. He sent over a picture. I've got one of those sitting in my living room right now. So
one of the old PA systems,
an old grandpa and grandma radio, something that would have been in before TVs would have really been popular. This would have been what you'd have been listening to.
You should put it up. You
won't be able to see it, unfortunately. If I
do.
Okay,
all right.
Yeah.
The viewers will, right?
It's an old Zenith thing. Actually, what I should do is I should pop it over and you, because if you share it.
And I grew up basically in a Zenith TV repair shop, and so that was
exactly. This one you'd probably appreciate if I can get it to pop over to you.
All right, where are you sending it to?
I'm going to just do it on Facebook here. Oh yeah, There we go.
Standing by.
Yeah, it should be there in just a second here. There we go.
Oh yeah, yep, for sure.
Yeah, the old Zenith one, and that's appropriate to Scott in a couple of different. Not only is it an old unit like what we're talking about, but it's Zenith.
Yes, I think the tagline was the quality goes in before the name goes on.
Oh yes, there we go. There's the aging.
Although I spent a lot of hours in that TV repair shop. All right, let me see if I can pop that up here real quick for our viewers. There we go.
Look at that. That is.
Yeah, they were furniture pieces. Now, obviously, this isn't PA, but it's a really good jumping off point. And actually, I'll just take advantage of this to share the first of my pictures, because the picture that I'm sharing here is the Electro Voice factory back in the 50s, and that is in fact a home stereo speaker. Well, we can't call it stereo in the 50s, right? But it is a home hi-fi stereo. I said stereo again. Anyway, that's what they were making. And so the evolution, actually, gosh, I feel like I just need to get into the pictures because
that's what we're here for. Let's do it. Let's jump into it.
Let's do it. All right. So let's jump back to the pictures. So I think that's what we have this evolution, where you've got these home stereo speakers, and then suddenly there's this need to amplify sound professionally. And I want to share this quick picture that I found. And see if you can name that tune, John. See if you can identify this picture.
Is that Yankee Stadium?
It's Shea Stadium.
Shea, okay.
1965, and this is the Beatles. And the stage, it's hardly a stage, right? In fact, if you look at some pictures of the side of the stage didn't even have skirting around it, didn't even have draping. This is arguably the biggest rock band of all time. And this is the biggest concert of all time at the time. 55,000 people came to Shea Stadium. By the way, of note, in the audience were Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. So basically, you might say, wow, that's a tiny little stage, no light show. And by the way, where's the sound system? They were just using the stadium sound systems. You can imagine how atrocious that sounded. And by the way, stadium sound systems then are not what they are today. This was basically just paging horns, the state fair kind of sound.
Right.
So really mid-bandish, and then they had their 100-watt Vox amplifiers on stage. Well, the crowd completely drowned them out. There's headlines about this, how the crowd completely drowned out the band. In fact, the band couldn't even hear each other, for lack of.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was really, there's a great documentary. I think it's 8 days a week or whatever. It's worth a watch. It's been a while since I watched it. But, anyway, you realize this is the moment, really, I think. This is the moment that changed everything. Where, for lots of reasons, everybody said, wow, stadium shows are a thing now. Promoters saw money, 55,000 people, right? Bands saw opportunity, but that changed the game substantially, and it laid the groundwork for some other really well-known large events. And I'm going to go to one here.
Yeah, it's a really cool picture that you just wouldn't imagine a concert the way we've experienced them in the last 20 to 30, 40 years, 50 years, really. And that's where it kind of started.
It is where it started. It's exactly where it started. Again, my opinion, I don't know of another concert that was bigger, that was sooner. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Beatles at Shea in 65 is the thing that really set everything in motion.
It's kind of kicked off the industry, really.
It did, and it led to this in 1969. And again, the picture is bad, but I think everybody can recognize this is Woodstock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see Mike Bonacorso's right over there.
Yeah, you can pick him out.
Yeah, he's right there. Yeah. He said he didn't get naked. Well,
he's the old-looking guy in '69. Oh wait. With apologies to you, Mike. I love you. But if we look on the scaffolding, we can see the PA. And that's it. Now, I know DJs that bring more to a wedding ceremony.
Yeah.
So,
look at that. Yeah.
But this began the challenge. How do you do this? How do you provide sound? And I'm certain the sound was not as good as it could have been. By the way, this show we're focusing on speakers, but look at the mixing boards or lack thereof from that era. And it almost shames me a little bit. It's almost a little bit embarrassing to me to have all the resources that I have at my fingertips. And I feel like my sound should be better than it is. I feel like the pressure is really on me because we have these amazing PAs, we have these amazing signal processing systems, and we have these amazing mixing consoles. And I just feel like I should be able to make perfect sound every time. Anyway, but bear in mind, think about who was on this stage. Think about who was on the stage at Woodstock. The biggest names, right? So the answer was, what do you do when you need more? Well, you just add more. And I think this is the Grateful Dead. Nobody did it like the Grateful Dead, right? They're legends in their own right for a reason. But when I look at this picture as a front of house guy, I just think, oh my gosh, that must have been horrible.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Lobing and phasing and just things out of control. And knowing, of course, we didn't have the signal processing that we have now. We didn't have that technology. But this was the next, and certainly it was better than Shea Stadium, right? This was the next evolution. We'll just keep stacking stuff up, which, newsflash DJs, that's not the right way to do it, okay?
Not so much.
We're not in the 60s anymore. But it does look cool. I'm not going to lie. Love to see it. I'd love to hear it. I'm curious just to see how, anyway. Then comes the late 70s. And this is something that probably looks fairly mundane to everybody. You've seen them all over the place, the constant directivity horn. But if you go back to this picture, you don't see any horns. So, the CD horn, and we started to have horns. There were certainly horns at Shea, the paging horns, but this changed everything. Constant directivity horns gave us a lot better pattern control, particularly at the higher frequencies. And thanks to Mike Caston for his help on the information for this. So now you start to see that next evolution. And we'll walk it back to a bit more of a DJ level here, but suddenly we're starting to see horns popping up all over the place.
Right. What year about is this, would you say?
I would say early 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say early 80s. I don't know exactly. I could probably, Mike could probably, too bad Mike couldn't do the show tonight. He could just pin it down.
He'd be like, oh yeah, those came out in September of 1979. And on,
and again, Mike's younger than me, but also,
these guys, they know
Jim and Steve probably worked on these things. And Steve would have been amazing to get in the show. He's the guy who actually was the lead engineer on the PA that I own. And he's a great guy. And he said, I would love to, but he literally just retired like last week. So he's got better things to do, like be retired. So hopefully he doesn't mind me telling you all that. Anyway, what we know, of course, is that, sticking these horns like this actually is problematic. So while it improved some things, there were more problems here that we created for ourselves and we hadn't fixed yet. But anyway, then we start looking at bi-amplified systems, and now we're starting to get into signal processing, and of course today we have this incredible power in the DSPs, which stands for digital signal processor. We have all these amazing tools at our fingertips. Back then it was largely analog components. So either you would buy an amplifier with modules you would plug into the amplifier, and those were analog circuits. You remember those, John, because you're old as dirt. So, I remember them too. Mm-hmm. Anyway, or we had systems like this. This is the Delta Max, and you could buy a signal processor that you put in your system, and you can see that this is designed for the Delta Max. Mm-hmm. It's not like, a drive rack that you could say, well, here's a preset. No, this was for one thing. It did one thing. Mm-hmm. But suddenly now having, these crossover networks and having tuned systems and that's a key word. System, having tuned systems, things are really starting to come together. Back in the early pictures we looked at, a lot of guys were cobbling stuff together. It was homemade stuff. They were buying components, and it was not cross compatible. It was not consistent. It was, it's kind of like, I feel like it's comparing, the Wright brothers plane to, the space shuttle, to where we are today, that it's almost no way to compare them. I kind of feel like I'm drawing that same timeline.
Sure.
Because at this point now we're still in the 80s, I think. So, manifold technology, the MTLs, and now we're starting to see, these things come together, and things are getting bigger and badder and louder. The arena rock is here. In fact, this is a bunch of EVMTL from Metallica, where obviously loud and in your face has to be the name of the game. But you can see the massive rigging required and the extraordinary amounts of weight. Again, every generation is better than the last. Every generation, they're talking about how great it is compared to what was before, but we've continued to make leaps past that.
So now in this particular photo, are the three right rows, are those the subs, and then the three left are mids and highs? Yeah,
exactly. All subs, and then you can see there's four subs in each one.
Oh gosh.
Oh, and low frequency summation's fairly easy. Although again, engineers started figuring out stuff. When we start stacking things like this, we start changing the pattern. We start changing the directionality of the pattern, and unintentional if you don't know what you're doing, intentional if you do, right? Mm-hmm. So, but at this point, still, mind you, we don't really have computerized engineering, and I'll touch on that in a bit. Mike talked about some of the great resources they've got, and I've seen some of them in action. Mm-hmm. Here, engineers are doing a lot of things by trial and error. They're making measurements as best they can. I think Electro Voice is one of the first companies. I don't mean this to be an infomercial for them, but I've spent a lot of time in their engineering facilities, and they're extraordinary. So it's a great firsthand look at what they're doing. But, I think they had the very first polar robot, which would basically plot a polar around a speaker and take accurate measurements in an anechoic chamber. So that started to give engineers resources, but nothing like they have, today, of course. So, evolution. Check this out. I love this. So here we are into the late 90s, and we're getting to where now you and I are into our careers. I started in 93, and so this is the modern stuff, right? This is X-ray. And you can barely read the words, but you can kind of see where it says the sound system was simply awe-inspiring, giving the best sound I've ever heard in a stadium environment. Now, X-ray is great, mind you, but if you listen to it compared to like a modern PA, the linearity and the clarity of a modern PA, you look at X-ray and wrinkle your face. You go, ugh. But it was so good compared to what was, but it's the grandfather of what is now, right? So, and you can see here, the system has clarity. It also has depth and definition. I could truly hear the program and not the boxes. So obviously, they're making quantum leaps forward.
Right.
But look at that rigging. And by the way, each of these boxes is like the size of a refrigerator. I mean, they're huge. So I just think about what that day at work would be like. Fortunately, at this time in my career, I was not working on shows this big, so I don't have to worry about it. But here, this one here, I believe this is AC/DC with EV X-ray. And, you can see just that ginormous, massive hang on each side. Ginormous.
Yeah.
Massive hang on each side. I mean, they're beginning to probably stretch the limits of what arenas can hold, Let's see what else we've got here. Apparently we're at the end of the slide, so there we go. No, my mouse wouldn't move. This is, I believe this is Rolling Stones, also with EV X-ray. And, now we're starting to see some of these massive stadium builds here, just lots more besides just sound, set pieces. And we're really just starting to go crazy with this. But as these things are happening, the other thing that's really important to remember is amplification. And of course, that's a really good note to stick in our back of our mind as we start thinking about today's modern powered speakers, because as these systems got bigger and better, amplifiers had to get bigger and better. No longer was, a 30 watt or 100 watt amp big or even adequate. We start needing massive amounts of power. And the problem is we're still running on like Class AB technology. Class H was a quantum leap forward, where what we pulled from the wall actually got to our speakers as opposed to making heat. So again, you can imagine how much power was required for something like this, because again, the lights were incandescent and the amplifiers were probably Class AB.
Yeah, just
very inefficient.
At the peak of the show, the electric meters spinning.
Everybody's lights dimmed every time the kick drum hit. The whole town dimmed. So.
Oh. Wow.
Now we're into, probably the early 2000s here at this point. I think this is Kenny Chesney. And here we can see some delay towers. And those are XLCs hanging on the delay towers. Our mutual very good friend, Mike Dussault, actually was there and took this picture for me. This is at the stage level. So there you can see X-Line, which was sort of the predecessor to XLC, which is the predecessor to X2, which is what I have. And you can see, again, just massive. But now we're into line array. And you'll notice there's no longer these big horizontal, as Mike calls them, pineapple clusters, that now everything is linear. And this gives us a lot better cohesion. It allows us to give a lot better experience to the people in the back as opposed to the front. We can begin to overcome some things like inverse square law, air loss, that sort of thing. Line array began to solve a lot of problems.
So going from the pineapple that we just saw to this, what made that ability to happen? Was it because they could measure and understand audio and the way it moved? Was it components that made it so that the transition could be made, or was it just one was it was the flavor of the week where they liked the look of the pineapple, and then this look just evolved because they didn't like that look anymore?
I think it's everything. I think what they learned, I can't take any credit for that. What they learned as they went along, and they began to discover, how these arrays could function, how the line array could be so much better in these ways, of changing like inverse square law from a 6 dB loss to 3. But of course, it presented its own new challenges too, as we looked at, overlapping horn patterns and, beginning to process signals. So I don't have the patent document for this, but I do have actually one in my hands. And we've looked at this on some previous shows, but this is a waveguide. And this is what allowed us to have really flat, easy summation on high frequency. And by the way, high frequency summation is just not easy. So, this is what allowed line arrays to exist. Things that, in essence, allowed the sound to exit from the horn. Well, it wouldn't be the horn throat, excuse me. No horn. Scratch the word horn. I didn't say horn. You didn't hear me say that. From the high frequency driver, which would bolt on here, and now go through these, pathways in the waveguide to come out at the same time. And you can see if we stack these waveguides up, as we would in the line array, maybe I might need 3 hands for this, and I only have 2. We can see that those pathways are all very close together, so it becomes like a very consistent line, which is important, of course, for line array. So back to the picture tour. That leads us, and we've made this very rapid leap through the last, 60 years. But that brings us to, this is my PA. This is literally my PA. It's actually a picture of my PA at a show. And I partly put this in there because I wanted to show the evolution. And I partly put this in there just because I know everybody really likes this picture. DJs just go,
it's kind of cool. Maybe. I don't know. No.
Yeah. It's why I took the picture. I was working and I looked up and I went, that's cool. I love what I do. That's amazing. So I had to take that picture. But this is going to get us in very fast fashion to where we are today. Now, of course, we're still talking about line array, but mind you, all of these advancements and maybe this is a good time to just talk engineering advancements. All of these advancements that we've learned, the ability to measure, the ability to map the sound, to understand what happens, and most importantly, the ability to simulate it. So that we don't have to build it to test it. We can build it in the virtual realm in a computer, and the computer can tell us what's going to happen in terms of thermal, what's going to happen in terms of mechanical, what are the rigging stresses, what about vibration, what about sound. The computers largely can produce these results very fast. So in the time it might take for an engineer to design something and then build it and then test it, computer simulated model could have done that 20 times.
Sure.
And of course, with a lot less waste. You're not junking that box. Now, that's not to say they don't build things to test them, but you can now simulate and model things to a point where you can build something and test it. And of course, you and I have spent a lot of time in engineering facilities, and we see those, unpainted wooden boxes, the ones that are,
they do exist. Yes.
And of course, now we have things like rapid prototyping. So you can rapid prototype things like waveguides and see, does the computer data match the real world, the measured data match the simulated data, that sort of thing. And that's why, we have such extraordinarily great sounding speakers today. And really, for what you're getting, the modern speakers are so cheap. I mean, I know people say, well, how can you say they're cheap? But they are. When you look at what you're getting with a low-cost box like ELX 200 or ZLX or EKX, even ETX, I know that's a premium box for DJs, but boy, what you're getting for that price point, we didn't get a quarter of that for the same money 20 years ago.
Oh, for sure.
Not even close.
So one of the things now, are these powered, or do you have separate amplifiers down below and you're just running the signal up there?
These are passive. So the amplifiers are on the ground, which is nice because all the big heavy power cables stay on the ground.
That's what I was wondering, yep.
However, and you don't see a lot of powered pro touring line arrays. You're seeing more. But again, it's not as big a mandate there. And the advantages and the trade-offs and amplification, you don't see as many powered pro line arrays out there.
Okay.
But in the DJ world, of course, we see a ton of powered speakers, and there's some real advantages to that. One, amplifiers, now we're talking Class D technology. We've been able to filter out some of the oscillations and high frequency things that, tend to happen there. They've just gotten so effective and so efficient. They deliver so much energy to, put the rubber to the road, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you have built-in signal processing. So all of the tuning, all of the, electronic wizardry that makes our system sound as good as we do, we don't have to start buying and plugging in components. We just plug in the mixing board, and the speaker is already basically ready to go out of the box. Likewise, by the way, my amplifiers have all those presets and thing in them. Mm-hmm. And actually, you know what? Let's do a quick screen share, because I think this is a really good time to talk about that technology. Let me do a different one real quick. I'm going to do a video. And I'm going to tell you that the video has audio. And let's see. I need to share computer sound. And it's going to sound terrible. Well, the reason is my phone is simply overloaded.
Oh, yeah.
This is a rock show, and my phone simply could not handle the sound level. Also, you'll notice the screen keeps vibrating, and that's because the low frequency, the bass waves are so strong, they're moving the laptop screen. So you'll notice the screen goes out of focus. But before we do, I'll just point out a couple quick things. This is a supervision panel for my amplifiers for my PA. This is 100 feet away from the stage back at front of house. But real quick here, you can see my mouse pointer, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right here, we can see the temperature per channel of the amplifier. I've got all my, limit indicators, thermal indicators, protection indicators, all basically my check engine lights, my dash lights, so to speak. Of course, my status, this amplifier is online. Here's a summary of groups of amplifiers down here, but this is individual amp channels up here. My temperature, my load, it's telling me, yes, that speaker is still there. Everything's good. Mm-hmm. If that speaker started to move out of tolerance, the speaker wouldn't necessarily have to blow. But let's say that the impedance was measured at one thing prior to the show, and the amplifier remembers that. If that impedance starts to change, the amplifier is going to say, hey, you might have a failure coming up here.
Sure.
Not much you can do about it during a show, but you can definitely do something before the next show. So you might say, you know what, let's change out box number 2. Because it seems like we've got, something that's out of tolerance here. Right. So we don't have a problem the next night. Mm-hmm. A couple other cool things, again, drive level, that sort of thing. This is just analog through. It could have digital audio routing, but I'm not using it in this case. Input sensitivity, yada, yada, yada. Down here, power consumption. It's showing me in kilovolt amperes how much power this amplifier is drawing. And by the way, one thing I want you to notice, we talked about amp efficiency. Mind you that this sound is so loud my phone can't handle it, and watch the power consumption. Watch how those things just really don't, they're just cruising. You'll notice I'm nowhere near limiting this system. Mm-hmm. So let's just roll it and give it a quick look. So, we know we didn't see those power meters really fluctuate very much. We can see here, actually, this one, I happen to know that these 4 amplifiers are subwoofers. And we can see that these 3 anyway. You can see the power consumption is a little bit higher for the subwoofer amplifiers as opposed to high frequency channels. But anyways, I got no worries. I mean, I'm basically sitting back there watching my high performance machine idle,
sure,
while it's ripping people's faces off. And that's what you want. Listen, that's what you want, because it has to do this night after night after night after night after night. This one crowd is going in there getting their ears pinned back, but we're on the road doing this night after night after night, and that system should not be redlining. It should be just doing its thing, cruise control, right? Get on the highway and set it to cruise. That's what we do. Next night we're going to do it again. So
let's take that very first device that played audio that Scott Russo showed us, and the speaker that's in that, the cone that's in that, really in most ways in it's doing the same thing as what your system that you were showing there. It's moving air.
Yeah, it is. Fundamentally, it's turning an electric signal into an acoustic signal by moving air.
It's just doing it 1,000 times better with the technology.
I think a really good example would be take, a Model T and compare it to a NASCAR. Same thing. They're both cars. And mechanically speaking, they're very similar in the way that they operate. But we've learned a lot about the materials, about the stresses, about, the forces that we apply to a NASCAR would simply break the wheels on a Model T. Those
Right.
wooden wheels would simply snap. And so we've learned all these things, and we just continue to evolve. And someday this video will be dated. Someday people will look back and go, wow, that's quaint. But, because remember, X-Array, X-Line, there's nothing was great about Shea Stadium other than the Beatles. They're great. But, but we look at all these evolutions as breakthroughs. This is just the latest breakthrough. And certainly, DJs continue to be surprised by something like the Evolve. And you should be, because it's so small and it's light. And there's other great column systems out there too. But it is a breakthrough where you go, wow, I cannot believe what comes out of that thing for what it weighs and what it costs. I can't believe that. Well, believe it. It's science. In fact, let me show you something. Let's go back to my screen share.
And that's what I really wanted to get into but there's this thing called physics.
Well, let's bring it all home. So this is the inside of one of my EVX2s. From this array, this is the inside of one of the boxes. By the way, I wish I'd have chosen a different picture to show you the magnets on the back of the high frequency, because they are monsters. Just massive. But again, they're the NASCAR. They're designed to go at 8,000 RPMs all night. And by the way, if you're a NASCAR guy, if you're a car guy, previous shows have clearly established I'm not. I don't actually know what the tach runs on a NASCAR. So just, if I'm wrong, just park it. But what we can see is we have a waveguide like we looked at here for the high frequency. What we can also see is a waveguide over the low frequency. So this makes this 12 act as both a low frequency, a mid-low, and also it makes it act like a mid. We are able to completely remove a driver here. The predecessor to this box used to have a mid-range driver. And the engineers told me, we're going to get rid of the mid-range driver and we're going to make it better. And I said, I'm nervous. You're taking out a driver and you're telling me that the box I'm going to spend more money than a house costs on is going to be better and it's going to have less stuff in it.
Right.
They said, yeah. And I believed them because I believe in physics, but I was skeptical. I was nervous.
Right.
This is a big loan. It's going to take me a long time to pay off. I'm like, man, they better be right. Dude, let me tell you, they're so right. It sounds so much better. The mid-range driver was the weak point. It simply couldn't keep up. So now you've got a monster 12-inch and you've got these monster high frequencies, and this waveguide solves all the problems and it makes it sound great. And by the way, what we're doing here, this is kind of fun to note, is I was one of the very first people, actually I think I was the very first person in the world to get X2s. And that was largely due to the fact that I knew people there and I was trying to order more of the old box and they said,
maybe
I want to just wait a minute. I'm like, oh, okay. Probably shouldn't have told you that, but whatever.
Yeah.
So because I had the first X2s that had ever gone out on tour in the world, this box is back at the Electro Voice Engineering Facility and they wanted to take it apart. They wanted to see what happens when you take it out and you do what we saw in the video to it every night.
Yeah.
Certainly they tested it. They've been developing it for years, but finally you got real world. How does it handle getting bounced down the road? How does it handle doing this night after night after night after night? I'm very pleased to say it handled it great. I've yet in 6 years to replace a single driver. So that's pretty good. I expect that I will have to replace a driver sooner or later, but so far, not yet. Anyway, so pay close attention to that waveguide. And this is what really brings it all home for me with the Evolve is take a look at the Evolve here and we see waveguides. So the same technology that's been driving the highest levels of concert sound is precipitating its way into DJ level speakers. And certainly DJs are the beneficiaries of that. We already see remote app-based control. And I think you're going to see more and more things. RCF has RDNet. You're going to see the same type of system supervision and control that I have, probably in a simplified form, continue to work its way into to that level where you can really, in a literal sense, take the temperature of your system.
While it's working, while you're out there at the show, to be able to have that instant feedback.
So valuable. So valuable. It's again, kind of like having the dash lights in your car. In the rarest of cases, we'll see something out of spec or whatever. One time a speak-on connector didn't get clicked all the way. Mm-hmm. And so it was making contact at first and then vibrated loose. And suddenly I saw a whole cluster go offline, and I'm on the radio. I'm like, and luckily it was just during sound check, and somebody was able to climb up there and click it back in. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you don't know why. Well, I mean, maybe you go, I think it sounds weird over there. I feel like I'm missing something. But with line array, unless you're walking to that part of the arena, if it's not the boxes covering where you're at, you don't really know.
Right.
So, you might hear things change a little bit in mid-low, but but there it is, right in front of you, right on the computer screen. Now I just lost amp channel 16 or whatever,
Yes, we know exactly which cabinets and which arrays aren't functioning. And
well, that speeds it up so much. Exactly. It's not a guessing game. You say this is exactly where you need to go, and you say, well, is it likely that I lost all three speakers simultaneously? No. Oh, okay, what could it be then? Well, it's probably a loose cable, right? And it was.
So you mentioned, of course, that there's going to be the ability to monitor and watch, kind of looking ahead into the future. We've seen the Evolve 50, Evolve 30, they've gotten a little smaller and can do an incredible amount. But getting back to the physics word we used a little bit ago, there's some things that, getting back to the original, moving air still takes some things of size. And do you see things getting even smaller, or where do you, looking into that crystal ball?
I would hate to rule out anything, but I feel like, a 12-inch sub in the Evolve is never going to replace an 18. Maybe I shouldn't say never. We're nowhere near that point right now. Mm-hmm. And a 21-inch sub will simply do things that an 18 can't. It just, they're just mechanically different. However, I think, we have to ask ourselves, and I've said this so many times on the show, people are now quoting me, which is great, by the way. Thank you, viewers. But have the right rig for the gig. I would never bring an Evolve to one of my concerts, mm-hmm. But you would probably never bring my rig to one of your shows. Although, let's be honest, you would if you could, right? I would too. But anyway, it's the right rig for the gig. So, if we need what an 18 will do, we're going to need an 18. Mm-hmm. If we want to carry in something small and beautiful and elegant like the Evolve, well, then it's there. I think there's some middle ground where people are pairing things like the EKX 15, putting some 15s there just to give it a little bit more low end oomph, But yeah, I don't know where the future is going to go. I would have loved to, and after he's got some time to vacation a little bit, I love colleaguing with these guys. I love networking these guys. I'd love to have coffee, with Steve or Jim or somebody and say, did you ever imagine when you were a 19-year-old intern, what you'd be doing at the, mm-hmm. I'll use the word zenith of your career. You see what I did there?
Yeah, I did.
Anyway, so I don't know, John. This is 27 years for me. Mm-hmm. What will things look like in another 20 years? I'd love to tell you, but I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah, because it's made such strides in technology and ingenuitive people. When it all comes together, great things happen.
It does. And it's been fun to watch, fun to be a part of. It's fun to not have to lift heavy speakers like X-Array.
Yeah, especially when you're doing, grandma's 80th birthday party.
Well, listen, even for us, each X2 box is only about 94 pounds. And I know, you might say, well, 94 pounds is heavy. Not really. not compared to what we used to have to move around. And there still are larger boxes. It's an arena box. There's still stadium boxes. There are still much bigger line array boxes. Those aren't the shows I do. I'm not doing, stadium shows. But it's really nice. They're stacked up on a cart, and you put the motor on it, you pull the first stack up, and you put the cart underneath and connect it and pull the next stack up, and you just keep going. And it's really not that physically intensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All the little tricks of the trade and how the setup and things have become so much easier in that arena.
I think you've come to a few shows and you've watched kind of how we set things up.
I have. Yeah. It's a it looks from my perspective like a very well run machine. Maybe on your side, but you know more about it. It looks like a level of chaos, but it's like, wow, there's people doing these things and exactly right. And they're right there. It's like, wow, this is.
No, it's pretty well run. I think it's it's practiced. It's rehearsed. Something I'll kind of mention to viewers. It's not on the subject of speakers, but one of the things we talk about is safety. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have an accident, and I don't believe in accidents, right? I believe in incidents. But if you don't have an incident, you might say all's well that ends well. But we try to keep track of near misses too, where you say, man, that could have went really bad. We got lucky there. So let's talk about how we got in that spot and let's avoid having it happen again. And so that's why it looks like a well-oiled machine. Is it's a practice process, and we have great people who are committed to the plan. They're committed to the schedule. They're committed to the riggers. I don't mean the riggers like up in the air, the riggers like the riggers of the work, but we're committed to both. That's I think DJs are achieving the same results. I think they're taking a lot of plays out of the tour playbook. We're making a lot of custom panels for people and a lot of, cable assemblies to allow for speed. Mm-hmm. And DJs are doing that same thing. Yeah.
Ben, we need to wrap up. Thank you very much for putting some things together for us tonight. That was kind of I was wondering how long we were going to go tonight. And yeah, you had some good information and good stuff there in our walk through our speaker history.
Well, if you get me talking about nerd, and of course I'm a history buff anyway. Obviously, I have an old speaker or old mixer on my desk over there. But you get me talking about speakers, this could be a long show.
Well, good. This is kind of a beginning again, as we're going to be looking at different aspects of the speakers that we use. But we needed to kind of establish a starting point, and that's what we did tonight. We'll be hitting more of these topics throughout the winter, and of course, Howie's like. In love. He saw your system there, and he's like, his statement, and I got to read this for those of you on Facebook because you guys can't see this. Where was that? Howie says, I would happily spend a night in jail to have Ben's rig at one of my community picnics.
Well, you don't have to spend the night in jail, Howie, but we'll have to figure out a way to get it there. I would love to just get it out to hear it again. I think like a lot of us, DJs, I want to tell you, and of course I spent 15 years as a DJ. I went through my own journey of buying speakers and I made some bad decisions early and I learned from them and I try to help you now. But DJs are kind of the bright spot in the industry. You're really the only ones that are working. Broadway shut down, tours are shut down. So I'm so very happy for you guys and a little bit jealous. Really can't wait to hear my rig again. I know it's going to be, like a long lost reunion with a lover. And hopefully my wife doesn't watch this show, but I know she does. She'll understand. Look, she's been married to me.
It was that one time where you were on the road for a couple of weeks and you came home. That's what it's going to be like.
She'll get it. Yeah, she's had me home since March. So now the PA needs some loving, and listen. Everybody who's watching is going, they're looking at I know viewers, I know at home, you're looking at your wife going, that's not weird. It's not weird. No, it's not weird.
Not weird. Oh, boy. But we're on that happy note. We're going to wrap up tonight's show. Thank you guys for being with us. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Jay and Brian are getting themselves ready to go tonight. And then next week, we'll be back with another Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Thanks, everybody.